All right, my friends, welcome back to Real Estate Bites. This is episode 124, going strong. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into today's topic of the day, which just happens to be what's going to happen with all the office buildings that are emptying out and people are going broke, blah, blah, blah. So before we get into that, I'm happy and proud to announce that Civitas I have merged, or rather I have partnered with a local construction and management company. And now Civitas Property Management Solutions is a thing. We have everything you need to manage your investment properties. We have all of the contractors, all of the the amenities and whatnot, the systems to take care of managing your real estate investments. So if you or someone you know needs or has been considering the use of a property manager for their real estate investments, give me a call, hit me up, shoot me a message. We can take care of you. Civitas Property Management Solutions is now online. We already have about 100 properties under management and obviously looking to add more, and we want to take care of you. So again, if you know someone, hit me up. We'll take care of you. All right, let's get into this. So it's, at least in the real estate circles, it's been no secret that the office space is in trouble and is in decline. Probably shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody, but really what I want to talk about is what happens, what can happen with these office buildings, what's happening to the people who own them, and what can be done about it, right? So post-pandemic, right, when our government hold us all up and told us we weren't allowed to go to work, that we had to stay separate from one another, blah, blah, blah. That gave birth to the remote work situation. People could basically, as long as what they did was embedded or housed on the internet, they could work from anywhere. They may have to travel to meet some clients or whatever, but basically, if the vast majority of your work was done on the internet, you could work from anywhere. And the pandemic really opened that up to people. I mean, I sold houses to many people moving from California, Oregon, DC, Charlotte, the coasts basically, who wanted to move back to Ohio either because they had family here, they grew up here, or they did their research and they realized the cost of living was pleasant. And there were a lot of things here that they could do that they like to do. I can say that I think living in the Great Lakes Basin is awesome. So at any rate, a lot of people started to work from home. And since the pandemic, we've had vacancies in office buildings upwards of 20% or more, right? The average vacancy is over 20%, right? Which that means that has a couple impacts, right? Number one, the biggest impact is obviously going to be on the property owner, because now with less people using offices, that means less revenue coming in to your building, which means your building is worth less money, right? That's a big problem if you want to refinance, if you want to sell, whatever it might be. If you are counting on the equity inside of your building, inside your real estate, and there's less because the building is worth less, because there's less revenue coming in. And again, in commercial real estate, that is how you value a building. It is not like in residential where we place a value based upon what are other similar houses selling for. That's the value. That's the current market value. Value in commercial is based upon the amount of revenue that is brought in, less the expenses to operate there. And then you have that net income. That is how you base the value of a commercial real estate property. So commercial real estate properties are losing value, specifically in the office space. So what happens and what does that mean? There's the problem for the owner, the landlord, right? There's also the problem for the business who is renting 20, 30, 40 office spaces for their large corporation. And now half of those people are working from home. A lot of people did not want to return to the traditional office. A lot of people got very, very comfortable working out of their home and kind of refused. Many companies, some companies were successful in strong arming their employees back into the office. Many could not do it. They had they had to cede that fight. They had to give over to their employee who wanted to work from home, because if your employee is just as productive, and in many cases more so, working from home, well, then why force them back into a place they don't want to be? Their morale is lower, their production slips. Okay, so anyways, you have less people coming to the office. You don't need as much office space as you did in the past. And so you're renting dead space, and you don't want to do that. So now businesses are looking to move, right? So this has been happening for a couple of years now in the coast. This has been a problem. It's happening here locally in Cleveland. A very, very recent and obvious example is the Sherwin-Williams relocation, right? This is a product of what's going on in commercial office space, remote working, et cetera, et cetera. Right? So you have businesses who rented a lot of office space. They don't need as much. Now they're looking to move to somewhere else where they don't have to pay as much money, right? So they move. Now that person, that landlord, again, there's the vacancy, right? There's where the value in these buildings go down. The inability to refinance because of the declining values is a problem. So you have this going on, and I think it's only going to get worse. I think the experiment of remote work and at-home offices has run its course, and we have learned from that experiment that remote work, it works. It's successful. There's a place for it, and more people desire the work from home. More and more people desire to save money on the commute, to save time in their day. It is really, really nice. This is coming from somebody who's worked from a home office for the past 20 years. I can tell you, I absolutely love waking up, showering, getting dressed for the day, walking down into the home office and starting work immediately. Not having to load up a bunch of stuff into the car. Now I have an office, but I would say I spend more time in my home office than I do in my physical office. My physical office is really more for the agents in my team to have a place where they can come, have workstations, print, bring clients if they want a neutral space to meet with a client, blah, 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 right? So I love being able to just go in my home office, work. I love the opportunity that if I'm getting hungry, if it's lunchtime, I can leave my office, go directly in my kitchen, make a little lunch, and get back to work when I'm done. This saves me time. I don't have to pack up and go anywhere. It saves me money because the food's already been bought. I'm not going to a restaurant or a fast food or blah, 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 right? And again, time coming back. And then at the end of the day, when I want to wrap up work, I wrap it up. I close my office door. There's zero commute time, right? So I have, on some days spend $0 in gas, zero time in my car. At any rate, between that and the fact that the smart use of artificial intelligence is going to gobble up some jobs. It's not going to gobble up tons of jobs, I don't think, or all the jobs, but it is going to shrink the payroll for companies. There's absolutely no doubt about it. I can tell you that what ChatGPT does for me, I could easily pay another person for, because I don't have the time to spend on the computer researching, compiling things. I don't have the time to do that. So typically I would pay someone to do that for me. I don't have to, because ChatGPT costs me $20 a month and it's doing the work for me. So that said, the office vacancies, I think, are only going to increase as the years progress. Now, that doesn't mean that offices are going to be completely obsolete. You're definitely going to need offices. You still need offices. I need to have a physical office, as I explained earlier, where people can come to. But the office space is going to change, and we'll get into that later. So there's a crisis, right? Let me pull this visual up here. By the way, ChatGPT put this together for me in about 10 minutes, right? All the research that I did for this program, this slideshow, this is all ChatGPT, right? I'm not going to spend my time putting this stuff together. That's why you didn't see it in earlier episodes of Real Estate Bites. But this is what I'm talking about. Typically, I would need an assistant who I would pay to put this stuff together so that I can stay focused on what makes the company money. and not these kinds of things. But I don't need to pay that assistant now because, well, I pay my assistant $20 a month and it lives inside my computer. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So at any rate, um, we've already talked about what is the crisis. And so how do we fix it? It's called adaptive reuse of these buildings, right? So adaptive reuse means taking your existing building and transforming it into something else. It could be a complete and total transformation. It could be slight, but this is what people are going to need to think about. And I know that usually we are talking about residential real estate here on Real Estate Bites. I'm going to talk about how this stuff, what it's going to mean for you, and how there may be opportunity for you in the future. Whether you own a small office building and are seeing these problems, whether you are a tenant of an office building and the current layout of your office space is becoming obsolete because you have a lot of dead space, but we'll talk about that stuff later. So what can be done with the office building that is seeing vacancy levels increase, and the value of that building going down, down, down? What can be done to this building to turn it back into prime real estate that cash flows, that brings in good money, that's worth the investment dollars? There's a number of things that can be done and are being done around the country. So the first one, that's kind of the easiest thing, is to convert it into residential use. So taking apartment buildings and turning them into, taking office buildings, turning them into apartment buildings or condos or hotels. There are challenges to this. There's a challenge to any adaptation, but the challenges here are, number one, this office building was laid out to be just that, offices, and not necessarily living spaces. So what you don't have, there's going to be a lot of electrical and plumbing considerations. Clearly, you're going to need to create the layout inside of the floor plate of the office. The floor plate being, here's the square footage on this level, and here's how it's laid out. You're going to need to change that to create a living space out of what was office space. Office spaces typically aren't considering, if you have one floor that's filled with offices, you might have a handful, 3 or 4 places where you could adopt the plumbing to make a kitchen and or a regular sort of residential bathroom, versus having, if you've got 14 to 20 apartments or condos on one floor, you need a kitchen and at least one bathroom in every single one of those. So a lot of plumbing concerns, a lot of electrical concerns. Sometimes if the building's old enough, it's not even really possible. Sometimes if the building's old enough, the best use is to simply knock it down and create something brand new. But if the building has been built in the last 40 to 50 years, probably you can find a way to create some sort of adaptive reuse going from office to residential. Other ideas, we talked about hotels, similar to residential. Some people are making laboratories, life science labs, or medical places, educational institutions. Offices could easily become a place that turns into a bunch of classrooms or special use rooms, labs, whatnot, right? Education is a big thing that's happening. When it comes to education, when it comes to residential, you kind of want to bring an uptown into downtown, basically, is what's happening. Vertical farms is something that's very, very interesting. Basically, what you have is you're taking an office building, you're using hydroponics and other indoor means to grow vegetables and plants, and you're creating a farm. For those here who are local that watch this program, Midway Mall in Elyria has been a defunct shopping center for decades. It recently was sold. Actually, it was sold and then the contract fell apart. But the Port Authority, one of the bids, and I kind of wish that they had gone this way, because I just think there was so much upside to it. But one of the bids that they received was to turn Midway Mall into a vertical garden, where instead of, you walk into Macy's, you would walk into this new space where you would have racks and racks and racks, all the way through that you're growing tomatoes and peas and corn, whatever it might be. But I just thought it was an amazing idea to bring some food production inside of an urban center. There were plans to allow farmers markets there in the extensive parking. It wasn't just going to be the food that was farmed inside of what was old Midway Mall, but they would allow any local farmers to bring their food to the farmers market. They were going to support food banks out of this place. Also, I think the educational opportunities to bring in students from Lorain County Community College, Ohio State's Worcester campus, that's their agricultural campus, and other nearby schools for learning opportunities would have been tremendous if they had done that, if they had accepted that bid. So anyways, that's another example of what could be done in that place, right? So what makes it hard? We talked about the structure. We talked about how plumbing, electrical, these types of things might be challenges inside. The actual structural integrity. Can you knock down a bunch of walls and recreate the floor plate without creating structural concerns? Some of the other things that make it very difficult are codes. You start messing with stuff, you're going to have to bring everything up to code. Is that even possible inside there? However, some of that coding and some of those building codes, there's opportunities in there by way of subsidy from local, state, and federal government, right? These are some things, these are obstacles that can always be overcome. The unfortunate reality is a lot of times they can only be overcome by big money, right? Because I can tell you, if you're a small-time player and you go to your local U.S. bank branch, the potential of you being approved for a conversion like this is very, very small. But if you're a big monster company or fund, the potential for you getting funding from a bank and subsidy from government together, plus local tax abatements, that's where you're going to see the big time conversions. We'll talk about small time here in a bit, right? So there are financing opportunities. Designs that win. We just talked about that. There are financing opportunities. There's federal tax credits. There's grants available for this kind of thing. They're kicking around. In 2025, there was what was it called? I'm looking here at my notes and I can't find it. The Revitalizing Downtowns and Main Streets Acts proposed a 20% federal tax credit for converting vacant offices into residential. Why does it take so long for our government to put these things together? It's real easy for them to put stuff together that's detrimental to the people, but things like this that might actually provide solutions, they seem to kick it around for quite a while office space is going to flounder. I don't understand what they're waiting for. Are they waiting for some sort of, the pain to be great enough? I don't know. I don't get it. Another thing to consider too is parking, right? Is there enough parking or is there too much parking at the current site for whatever you want to convert it into? Typically, if you're going to convert office to residential, most offices don't have enough parking to accommodate the sort of revitalization or renovation into residential that you might need. Not only does everybody who live there need a place to park, but all their guests need a place to park. So oftentimes parking becomes an issue. And oftentimes there are parking minimums that are designated by municipalities. Sometimes, Cleveland and Cincinnati both are waiving parking minimums and reducing fees for adaptive reuse, right? This can make or break projects. There's, again, I talked about tax abatements. That's something that is something you can get from locals. That always becomes negotiated, because with a tax abatement, basically the municipality is giving up revenue for years to come to support your project. But those tax abatements may be the difference between the project happening and not. And the difference between the project happening and not may mean, okay, so you do a tax abatement for the actual project and the property owner, but you also now have income taxes that are going to come into the city, new property taxes. Let's say in the case of condos, people who own those different units are going to be paying. But bringing population in, you're going to support the local economy, the micro local economy, whatever stores are around there, grocery stores, restaurants, entertainment, they're all going to see an influx of business with the influx of people. This is how it goes, right? So there are things out there that are available for people who want to do these projects. Okay, so let me drop this and talk about, let's say you're a small guy. We still need offices, right? Let's say you own a small office building, anywhere USA, and the idea of a massive conversion from office to residential doesn't make sense, but you still have some use or good use of the office, but not, what can you do to attract people to stay or come to your new office space? Offices, they do need to change. We still need offices. And what offices need to become, you still need some private offices because you're going to have executives, you're going to have sales reps or design engineers, design people, marketing people who are working remotely but still want to come into the office. They need to have shared office space, or dependent upon their level within the company, maybe they can come in and they have their own private office. So you still need to have a C-suite of private offices, but what you really need to create inside of your office building is a collaborative and creative space, right? So even the design of it should be large. It should be open air. It should allow a lot of natural light. The color selection that you choose should be very, very purposeful. Yellows, which sound hideous to most people, are actually known to spur cognitive activity. Blues are also good. So the color selection, a collaborative space where you have both the tools for people to come in and do work that they can't necessarily afford or house at their home, whether this is large printers or stockpiles of paper goods like folders, stationery, blah, blah, blah. I don't know, whatever your people have to put together to bring to a prospective client, all those tools and materials are located there. Also a place where people could sit together and work and brainstorm. You want to have something where you could project images onto. So as people sit and collaborate together on a project, they can put images up onto a screen. So you got to have a strong network in there. You got to have a space for collaboration, a space for comfort, a space for quiet, right? So we sit around this table, we're brainstorming, it's intense. We go for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Hey, let's take a break. We've got the Keurig over here, or maybe a little place where you could go and press your own coffee or latte. You got some lounging couches. California made this, Silicon Valley made this kind of stuff. Play a little bit of ping pong, right? Let your people go to recess and blow some steam off so that when they come back to the workspace, they're refreshed and ready to go, right? That's what office spaces need to become. So if you own one of these and you really want to attract high dollar clientele, so the thing is, you could have gotten so much money with all your little individual office spaces, but you can, if you create a state-of-the-art office space that provides what the company's new office requirements will be, you can collect as much money as you were before with actual less individual office space, because the space that you are creating and providing is worth it to them to pay a premium. All right. Here's another spot. And before I go into this, this is not financial advice. I am not a professional when it comes to the stock market or portfolio management or whatever. This is an opinion. These shows are here for entertainment and educational purposes. That said, if you are a passive real estate investor, knowing that this is about to be something that's going to take off, because, one thing I probably should have mentioned earlier, but in many cases, the way a commercial loan works, and in 2021 and 22, when we saw these all-time low interest rates, many, many, many people both residential and commercial, refinance their property. And they did so for a number of reasons. One, reduce their monthly uh, debt coverage, right? Reduce their monthly debt liability. Uh, Two, actually to increase cash flow, right? So they reduce what they owe monthly with a new refinance. And that means the rents that were coming in, now they get to keep more of it. So you're reducing your debt service, you're increasing your cash flow, or a lot of people did a cash out refinance. Either they took the money and ran, or they used that money to make major upgrades or invest in something new, whatever it might be. But the whole point is, a lot of commercial refinances happened in those couple years. Now, a commercial loan is typically anywhere from 3 to 7 years, right? Amortized over 20. And then at the end of that 3 to 7 year period, oftentimes 5, right in the middle is where most of them seem to land. At the end of that, they owe a balloon payment. So they basically owe the rest of the principal. And then at that point, they go ahead and refinance. So imagine in 2021, you took advantage of all-time low interest rates. You refinanced the property, and especially if you didn't make a smart decision with what you did with that money. But you refinance the property, and then your tenants started to leave you, right? So yeah, you owe less a month, your debt service is smaller, but your income is shrinking because tenants are leaving. And if you lose 20% of that income, that's going to hurt. Now you lose 20% of that income, and as long as that current rate is in place, you can be okay. But the moment that 5 years is up and that balloon hits, if you don't have all that cash, you have to refinance once again. And now at a new rate, 6 to 8 to 9%, whatever it was, when that note comes up, right, your monthly payment now increases a lot, and your vacancy is at 20%, right? Your income has shrunk considerably, and the threat of even shrinking income is around the corner. So there's two major opportunities for real estate investors that are upcoming. One, a lot of property owners are going to be in really hard financial shape over the next handful of years. I'm going to say over the next 5 years, we're going to see a lot of commercial real estate properties, specifically in this office space, come available for sale, and come available for sale cheap, or end up going through auctions because they can't afford it anymore. They're not, the value of the building is going to go down considerably because, again, when we talk about net operating income dictating the value of your building, right? That is the money you bring in less the expense to operate it. If it costs more to operate it by a debt service, higher electrical bills, higher, et cetera, more insurance, that's killing people. And the money that you bring in is less because your tenants are leaving. Your net operating income is going down significantly. The value of your building goes down significantly. There's going to be fire sales with office buildings, small to large, all over the place over the next, especially in large urban cores, over the next 5 years. There's an opportunity to pick up those spaces and begin your conversions for pennies on the dollar. Now, if you're not a player on that scale, and most aren't, admittedly, but you are an investor and you like the idea of passive income, well, the real estate investment trust is something that you might want to consider researching. And when I say research, I mean research it well. But I think there's going to be incredible opportunity in those REITs where they are specializing in these conversions. And it's really not, it's not the property holder that presents the greatest upside or income. It is going to be the large funds that own the construction companies who are going to get the contracts to do these renovations. Those companies are going to be the ones who are going to make money hand over fist over the next 5 years, right? They will stabilize the returns over time on real estate investments. But if you want to see exponential growth, it's going to happen in those companies who are specializing in adaptive reuse in the office space. All right, this was a long one. That wraps up my dissertation here on the office space. So let's get into this week's statistics. So what do we got here? Episode 124. This morning there were 419 units for sale here in Lorain County. That's houses and condos. There were 48 closed sales in the past week. Median square foot of those homes sold was 1,452. The median sale price was $228,578. Median square foot value. Again, we are seeing this correction here. $157.78 per square foot is what the median value was per square foot for the homes that were sold last week. Talk about this all the time. We are seeing a correction. Are we going to see this thing turn back around come springtime? I believe that yes, we will. I think this is just a seasonal sort of thing. Although I got to admit, I am surprised to see how deep the correction has been. I was surprised to see numbers under $160 per square foot over this winter. But here we have it. We have it 1, 2, 3 times so far in Q1, and we got right there at 160 another couple times here in Q1 2026. So the homes that sold last week spent 31 days on the market on median. We got a real stable interest rate here on the conventional note. 6.05% was where it was at when I woke up. And then the big sale of the week was in Columbia Station, $653,315. We'll take a look at this place. This is brand new construction in Columbia Station. And we'll take a look at these pictures. Let me make sure I got this showing. I do. Okay, so this is what $650,000 will get you by way of new construction in Columbia Station. As you can see, it is inside of a densely packed HOA, but as you would expect, pretty nice finishes. We've talked about this in the past in Real Estate Bites. You can see a lot of what are the current trends in new construction. We see color being added back in. They still have agreeable gray on their walls, but the all white cabinets. You can see the cabinets being a different color. You've got gray bottoms, white tops, and then this island is a nice brown color, right? So the use of color, the mixture of color. Wait a minute, maybe they don't have gray bottoms. That was just a trick of the lighting over here. They look gray, but they're not gray. So white cabinets with the brown island. Gas fireplaces seem to be going in all of these. Looks like, I'm guessing that's your master bedroom with the trade ceiling. Nice big master bath. Big walk-in closet. Right. Nice big wide LVT planks. Got a lot of builder grade here in the bath, whatever. $650,000, that's what it gets you in this development in Columbia Station. This is the Hickory Greens community. That's where you can find that down there in Columbia Station. All right, that wraps up episode 124 of Real Estate Bites. I appreciate you guys being with me. Listen, check me out on YouTube. You can now find Real Estate Bites on Spotify. You can find it on Apple Podcasts. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here on Facebook. I'm going to keep uploading these things, but as you can tell, I'm no longer going live on Facebook. They're not allowing me, so I'm looking to branch out and put this on more platforms. If you like what you hear here on Real Estate Bites, please share it with friends and family. Tell them to come here. Again, snap this code. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's where you will be able to find these videos week in, week out. And as always, take care of yourselves. I love you, people. I'll see you next week.